On today's Revealed Report, we want to step away from talking about the government shutdown, not because it's unimportant, but because everybody else is talking about the government shutdown, and we don't just want to be another sounding block echoing the same thing that every other media outlet is talking about. Here on the Revealed Radio Network, we have a unique niche, and therefore we want to present to you information that you're not going to get everywhere else. So today on the Revealed Report, I want to talk about the difference between proper nationalism, improper nationalism, and globalism. And there is a difference between proper nationalism and improper nationalism. You see, the globalists usually have this trick. They begin to label everybody who believes in nationalism as the people who believe in improper nationalism and associate it with Hitler, Nazism, and fascism. So that way we become weakened either to buy into the globalist ideology or at least be too weak to stand against it. But today I want to give you information that's going to show you the difference between proper nationalism against improper nationalism. And I believe our president has it right. And that's why I support him, because we do believe in America first, but not America isolationism. And we'll discuss that and give you details so that you can see prayerfully why I say these things and why I support the president with what he is doing. I also want to talk about the fact that the Revealed Radio Network's Burden of Vision was birthed right in the time of the COVID-19 madness because of the Great Reset ideology. However, that burden is still alive today. And the reason for that is because many people feel like we're in a comfortable situation because President Trump had become the president of the United States. However, you have to understand the enemy does not go away forever. The enemy goes away for seasons and usually comes back with a vengeance. And as we can see on the world stage, South Korea, Canada, Australia, the UK, many of them are still pushing the Great Reset. They just rebranded. It's the Great Reset 2.0. And they're beginning to push things and they're coming together with these ideas. And that does put pressure back on the United States of America. And if we ever vote in the wrong president, somebody like Lion Joe Biden or Calamity Kami Harris or AOC or the Squad or JB Pritzker or Gavin Newsom, then we could be one election away from really buying into the Great Reset ideology altogether and pushing that on the American people. I also want to talk about opposing worldviews. Is the world getting better or is the world getting worse? In Christian theology, is it going to be great end time revival or will there be a great falling away? I think you'll find my response to that to be pretty unique. Welcome back to the Revealed Report. I'm your host, John Wilson. Let's get into it. If you like the content of today's episode and you would like to help further our mission, do us a favor, smash the subscribe button or gently tap it. It all works the same. Give us a thumbs up, leave us a comment, and share us with somebody else. Thank you for your support. So the only thing I really want to say about the government shutdown is the fact that yesterday on the Revealed Report, I talked about how planes wouldn't be falling out of the sky and we wouldn't have to watch for a plane to fall upon our head just because the government shut down. And that is true. However, I just read this morning that there was two airplanes in New York City that actually clipped wings with one another while they were on, I guess, the runway, which, by the way, had nothing to do with the government shutdown. But I did find it very ironic it happened after I gave that episode. So I'm sure there's somebody going out, see, the government shutdown caused that. No, it didn't. That's not what caused those airplanes to clip wings. Nevertheless, today I really want to step away from the government shutdown. Everybody else is talking about it. Yes, it is important. And we talked a little bit about it, and we'll probably revisit it this week if it continues on. However, I want to step away from that because the Revealed Radio Network is not just another sounding block, just echoing everybody else and giving you the same material. I really want to take a moment to talk about the complexity because not everything is black and white. And we live in an age that either we see one side of the extreme or the other side of the extreme. And a lot of times we miss the things that are in between where truth usually is at. because I believe that truth is in the straight and narrow path, and they're opposing extremes that, if not careful, we can fall into that which is deceit on both sides. And so I want to stay where I believe the truth is at. And sometimes that means trying to work between what seems black and white and the extremes, and really diving in and seeing things for more than just what we see on the surface. And part of that is to really understand the complexity between proper nationalism, improper nationalism, and globalism. There is a globalist agenda, but there are also those that are key players on the world stage that are exercising improper nationalism. I would put in the category Vladimir Putin. I would put in the category Xi of China, who they are about their country. They are about nationalism. However, we can see that they tend to lean towards dictatorship. Of course, in China is absolute dictatorship, but Vladimir Putin leans towards dictatorship, and there's great evil from that dictatorship. However, at the same time, that doesn't make globalism good. You see, there are some that says either we have to be that kind of nationalism, or we have to buy into the globalist agenda. And the globalists use them as examples, and they especially want to use Adolf Hitler, the Nazis, the fascists, and Mussolini as an example to try to demonize anybody who believes in a form of nationalism. But not all nationalism is improper. There's nothing wrong with putting your country first. And we most certainly don't want to buy into the globalist agenda that erodes away national sovereignty. And you see that the radical left had gotten into the Democrat Party, beginning really with Barack Hussein who was being funded by George Soros, who has for a long time been saying that there's a globalist ideology that really needs to happen for there to be world peace and all these other things, and that America is standing in the way because of our national sovereignty, and that we need to buy into the globalist agenda. And usually what that means is there's going to be tyranny pushed upon humanity, and we're going to be the biggest funders of it until we bankroll it completely together to our bankruptcy, and we can't afford to help anybody. Because the truth of the matter is, if you're going to help other nations, you got to have a strong, prosperous nation. I believe this from the Bible when God blessed Abraham and said, I'm going to bless you. And then you're going to be a blessing to other nations. Unless we are blessed, unless we are strong, unless we are mighty, we really can't be a help to anybody else. So there's nothing wrong with putting the interest of your nation first. Now, I don't believe in American isolationism, and I know there are some on the so-called right, and I believe some of them are so-called conservatives, but nothing more than reprobates that have forsook their principles, and they want isolationism. But usually they're also the ones that are supporting those that say from the river to the sea, death to America and death to Israel. The same ones that want to be American isolationism are also the ones that want to support Hamas. So go figure it. I mean, really all it is grifting for clickbait. Okay. But we are not American isolationists. We do believe in MAGA, make America great again, which means going back to the founding principles, going back to a nation that was strong, had a strong military. Thank God that Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth is trying to make a strong military again, that was prosperous, that did not believe that every other country should rip us off, that believed exactly what William McKinley believed with tariffs, and exactly what Abraham Lincoln believed with tariffs, and Alexander Hamilton believed with tariffs, that our country shouldn't be ripped off by everybody else, and we should not be funding everybody else's missions. We talk about how we don't want to fund all these wars that are happening overseas, but also we fund them with our tax dollars with all types of crazy things. Now, I'll be honest with you, I am not American isolationism. I do believe that there are times we should be involved with certain things that is not on American soil, so we prevent it from coming to American soil. There's this idea within some on the conservative right that now we should pull back and become isolationists, and that we should have no involvement in the world. But the truth of the matter is, if we let them take territory, the globalists and evil dictators take territory in other places, then they gain power, which becomes a threat to us. And that's why America does have a presence in much of the world. And we even see this if you look back to the Bible. If you're a Bible believer, you can see Antiochus Epiphanes, who represents the Antichrist spirit. And how did he gain power? Well, he took power everywhere else, and then he used that power against God's people and began to take their land. So if we really want to protect America, we cannot wait until it's knocking on our door, until it's is coming to our soil, sometimes we have to make sure that the threat is not overseas gaining power so it doesn't come here with all its power. Now, that doesn't mean that we're war hawks that want to get involved in every single war, every single squabble. I don't believe in the George Bush doctrine, who was a conservative so-called Republican. He was a reprobate. He was a Republican milquetoast. What he said is, "I want to be the compassionate Republican." And really, what that meant is, I want to be a sellout and I want to buy into globalist causes. George W. Bush was globalist leaning. He didn't care about nationalism. He was globalist leaning, and he thought you can bring our type of democracy on all the world. But the truth of the matter is, if that's not in their heart, they're not going to buy into the ideas of the West. You're not going to get radical Islam to buy into the ideas of the West if they don't have a heart conversion. You're not going to appeal them. We thought that we can bring China into the world trade, and somehow they're going to get rid of communism. All they did was rebrand it. They called it the People's Republic of China, but they're still communism. They just rebranded it. And now we have allowed them to become very wealthy communists, that now they become our greatest geopolitical threat. And so the humanistic leftist ideology to try to bring world peace does not work. That's why you have to have a strong America with a strong presence in much of the world so that we don't allow these evil powers to rise up. And now I do believe in our national sovereignty. The radical left hates that. They want globalism. Barack Hussein wanted it because he was also being funded by George Soros, who wanted it. Hillary Clinton wanted it. When she was at the State Department, we were with George Soros' money. There was organizations we were trying to cause color revolutions. George Soros was involved in many color revolutions, trying to enact color revolutions overseas so that we can try to get our socialist leaning, leftist leaning rulers into place, get rid of one evil dictator and give them some socialistic system that's just as bad and sometimes even worse. And then to top it off, they took the color revolution playbook and brought it back to the United States of America. When we seen BLM and Antifa heating things up in the street, when they began to peddle lies to throw fuel on racial tension so that they can heat things up in the streets, and all of a sudden they use the COVID-19 madness to really push their globalist Great Reset ideology, and then try to get Lion Joe Biden to come along and say this is all Donald Trump's fault. If we get rid of him, we won't have any of these problems. But that wasn't the case. That was just a lie. It was a color revolution that we used in other places, and then we tried to bring it back to our own soil, all because they want a globalist agenda. And so if you believe in any form of nationalism, you are deemed a fascist and a Nazi. This is the same war room playbook from Kirk and Matson, who sold America homosexuality. And the way they said you're going to get America to buy into it is just get them used to it, get them laughing about it, make it a fun matter, begin to decrease their moral principles against it. And you do this by flooding this agenda in all of the media, make all their shows glamorize it and make the people who stand against it look evil and look wrong. Pump it out in every form of media you can. Use education to do it. Get people so soaked with the idea that it becomes normalized. And then call them fascists, call them Hitler, call them Nazis. Say that they're out there killing people. They're not really killing people. We see this with the LGBTQ2 plus community. You're killing me. When that's not happening at all. That's just a ploy to get people to be weakened, either to buy into the other side or to become so weak that they don't stand and speak out against it so that they can take territory. They try to silence our churches with all of this separation from church and state, flipping Thomas Jefferson's 1802 letter to the Danbury Baptists upside down so they silence us and take more territory. Our education system, politics, our court system, the corporations, they take territory because they silence us by putting these labels on us so that we shut up in a corner and we say, no, we're not like them. We're not radicals. And really what they're doing is they're sliding the Overton window. They're enlarging the Overton window and they're sliding the scale more and more to the left so that you either become weak and you don't speak out against it or you buy into it. And then they turn the younger generation against the older generation, just like China did under and during the under Mao Zedong when he began to revolutionize the young guards against the older generation. This is the ploy of the radical left, and that's why they label anybody who believes in nationalism or putting their country first as being Nazi fascists. And you have to understand, this is a constant lie. There's nothing wrong with proper nationalism. Improper nationalism is tyrannical rule like Hitler and Mussolini. But there is proper nationalism. And all that means is you put the interests of your country first, that you care about taking care of your people before taking care of the world. You don't want your jobs, your American jobs, to be shipped overseas. And yes, that means that you have to do tariffs. Now, you have to offset tariffs with tax cuts and regulation cuts, and you have to incentivize them to bring it back to American soil. But we cannot be selling our country out on this globalist stage. And you see that globalism has been rising up more and more, the idea of it in our nation, either subtly or intentionally. And you find that there is other countries that are buying into the Great Reset rebranding. It's Great Reset 2.0. We can see, I just put out an article, the Revealed Dispatch article about South Korea. South Korea arrested a pastor and is pushing against Christian churches right now if they speak out about anything they deem to be political, which means if you speak out against the LGBTQ2 plus community, you're being political. If you try to speak out against what they're pushing, you're being political. You see, they begin to label everything political. They redefine the language. Marriage is a moral matter. It's not political at its root. Politics is to make legislation and enforce it that actually supports right principle. But at the very foundation of it, it's moral. You see, the family unit, that's a moral thing. How we actually steward our money is a moral thing. But they begin to redefine the language and call it all political so that if you speak out against it, they can take your tax credit away, they can do whatever. And then they can even say you're becoming political and you can't do that because you're a pastor or you're a church or you believe in this religious movement. And so they even arrested the pastor because he's doing exactly what I'm doing, trying to promote a movement that stands against the radical ideas of the left because we have convictions that teach us against those things. It doesn't mean we hate people, doesn't mean that we want harm on people. We love people, but that doesn't mean we're going to compromise the convictions we have and the things we believe in. But you see, they're arresting them in South Korea right now, who is one of our allied partners, because the radical leftists are pushing their way in there and they hate Christianity. They hate our churches. They hate individual liberty and freedom. And they want a Marxist type of ideology that's merged with fascistic ideology. And they want to suppress anybody who speaks out against them. And then in South Korea, we see that they are shuttering doors of churches and arresting pastors over these things. Even in Canada, there's pressure coming against pastors and coming against churches. There was a singer who had a worship concert or whatever, and there was a firebombing that took place, and it seems like the Canadian government is standing with the firebombers and standing against those opposing churches more than the churches themselves. And you find even during the COVID-19 madness, there were more churches that were burned down and tore down than there was churches being able to be established, built, and growing, because they did this in Europe already. Europe used to have a rich Christian history, but the humanists have come in, and now many of the old churches is nothing more than historical monuments. And now you find, which was once a great, rich Christian heritage place, now is nothing more than humanism by large. China, the same way. And they're trying to do this to all the West. Canada is pushing it real hard. And Canada went really hard against any church that wanted to stay open during COVID-19. Anybody remember the pastor that got arrested? We've seen this even in the United States of America under the radical left. That's why we can never allow them to get back into positions of power. And it had become more than a left and right thing. It had become they who are in control and us who are just trying to survive it. And you'll find out the people that are against us that come to our side when it's too late, when they realize they voted in something that's a monster, that's trying to trample on all their freedoms and all their rights. But usually people wake up to the deception when it's far too late, while they've been demonized us the entire time. This happened in Russia during the Soviet Union. This happened when Hitler came in power. This happened when Che Rivera, and all of them came in power. You see, people thought it was for their own good until they found out it was going to slaughter them. It was going to suppress them, and they would not have freedom and rights anymore. And Canada is going bonkers. And I'm praying for Canada. And not only that, but then they're pushing their gun buyback program as they're beginning to ban certain firearms. They want to call them assault rifles. We refuse to call them that, because if I assault you with a spoon, we're going to start calling a spoon an assault spoon. It's a rifle. It's not an assault rifle. It's only used for assault if somebody uses it for assault. It's not designed for assault, just like a fork isn't. But if I stab you with a fork, we're going to say, well, I guess that's an assault fork. That doesn't even make sense. It's a rifle. It's an AR-15 or whatever the case may be. But you see, the radical left wants a disarmed populace, because they don't want you to have freedom of speech, and they don't want you to have the right to bear arms, because then they can control you. This is exactly what Vladimir Lenin and Joseph Stalin said. Take away their thoughts and take away their guns, and you can control them. There's nothing they can do to stand in defense of the freedom. And so you find in Canada, they're coming against churches, they're coming against godliness. As a matter of fact, if you were a dad that you didn't want your 4-year-old or whatever to have a sex change operation, then they could take your kid from you. We've seen this even in the state of California under Gavin Newsom, who acts like he doesn't understand that this is going on, just as much he didn't think that all the robbery was taking place under his smash and grab policies. They know exactly what's going on. They just don't have souls anymore. They're selling their soul for power and control, to buy into some globalist agenda, because they think that they're going to get infinite power and control, not realizing there's a day of judgment that's going to come. And so Canada's pushing this real hard. They're coming against churches, and they're trying to disarm their populace, and they're coming against freedom. We've seen it even the trucker protests, as they really exercised the Great Reset ideology when they began to froze bank assets and bank accounts. And that's how they suppressed the people, that people couldn't buy, they couldn't sell. It sounds like Revelation chapter 13, unless you get in bed with Mother Babylon and rich on the abundance of her delicacies. I don't know, maybe like Amazon and Nike did during wokeism of the Great Reset push during the COVID-19 madness, because they want to push their ESG scoring. And now we see that the UK is even pushing their digital ID. And I'm going to be honest with you, I support our president. I didn't really like the idea of the national ID. I understand the reasoning for it. I understand that we're trying to crack down on illegal, uh, illegal illegals coming into our country. I don't call it illegal immigration, because it's not immigration, but illegal aliens coming into our country, and they want to make sure that we secure our borders. And I understand all of that. I don't really like the idea when we start centralizing certain levels of power. Now, I don't think that President Trump by any means, or the conservative side of the aisle, was using it for that purpose. And so I don't put it in the same category. But the UK is wanting digital ID. And really, what it comes down to is, if you don't support the radical leftist ideology, they're coming for you. You can't even put out on your Facebook that you stand against certain things of the LGBTQ2 plus community, and most certainly don't make any jokes if you're a comedian, because they'll come to your doorstep and arrest you. You see, the radical left under Lion Joe Biden and Calamity Kamala Harris, and I don't think it was Joe Biden. I think he was incompetent because he didn't know where he was at from moment to moment. And they used him like a puppet. The puppet masters were pulling the strings and using him to push a globalist agenda. And that globalist agenda was this: that they would have digital footprint, they would have digital currency, they would have an ESG scoring, and they could track they could rate your ESG scoring based on your digital footprint. What were you posting on your social media pages? Are you helping environmental justice? Are you helping social justice? Are you harming that? Are you going to be a radicalized social justice warrior Marxist blended with fascism? Are you going to believe in individual liberty and freedom? As Thomas Jefferson wrote, that we have certain inalienable rights endowed to us by our Creator God. And you see, they wanted to push for a digital state where they also can enhance their AI tracking, just like China, where they can do facial recognition out on the streets. And they say it's for the good of the people, it's for your safety, because the radical left and even China understands that if they say it's for your safety, people will cough up their freedom for safety. I don't believe we should keep doing that, because they learn how to use that against us. And they even wanted their little 15-minute cities where they put everybody into a city and take away your gasoline vehicle because you're hurting the climate. And so you have to have nothing but electric vehicles, put you all in a city and have these facial recognitions, and they enhance their federal bureaucratic power to even track you, using even the post office to track what you are putting out on your social media and report that back to them, to begin to get your neighbor to spy on you as if we're back in 1938 Germany, to spy on you. And if they think that you could be a threat, and it's not even a matter of being a threat. If you could be a conservative on the right, then report that. And then we can go in and we can disarm them and we can take their guns and we can wreck and ruin their life. And they push these ideas over and over again. And then they began to redistribute the money and pick winners and losers. Because if you're a middle class business, you don't matter. If you're a church, we'll shutter your doors because you don't preach what we want, anyways. And so then we can print endless amounts of money. The Federal Reserve can pump that through BlackRock, who can pump that into Amazon, Nike, whatever, because they were saying we got to help the economy because of COVID-19. So we got to make sure that the economy and the stock is doing fine. And so they print endless amounts of money, dump it into these big corporations and say, hey, now that we got you addicted to that heroin, I just want you to know it comes with a greater price tag. We need you to align to our ESG scores. And so then that's when the woke madness began. And that's why overnight, all of these big corporations segregated and discriminated half of their customer base to push wokeism, even though many people didn't want to buy into it. And the corporations found out it comes with a price tag as well, because Americans were built by rising up and standing against evil tyranny. That's the founding of our nation. If you haven't understood that, we are not like Great Britain. We'll throw your tea in the harbor, because we believe in certain inalienable rights endowed to us by our creator God, and they're worth living for and they're worth dying for if we must. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, if a man doesn't have something to die for, he's not fit for living. Our freedoms are worth defending because we are stewards over it, because God gave it to us, and we want to preserve that for our children and the generations to come. And so South Korea is going against the churches, and we find that Canada is doing this too, and they're doing gun buybacks, and they're pushing all their social justice ideology. And we find that the UK is pushing all of this, and they're pushing their digital IDs. And so you can see that there's a joining of all these forces. And then as President Trump is trying to make sure that Hamas hands over the hostages and tells them that if they don't comply, Israel's at the door of Gaza and he's going to let them finish the job. But these dummies on the world stage of the UK and Australia and Canada come out and they recognize a Palestinian state. They're just doing that because they're Trump derangement syndrome, and they want to push this globalist ideology, not realizing that the jihadists, the Islamists, they also have a globalist ideology, but it's not the kind you think. It's not the kind where they let all the LGBTQ2 plus community have their freedom, because no, they don't do that. They'll throw you off the buildings, they'll hang you, or they'll stone you to death. They're using each other for the destruction of the West. And when they get done, they'll discard each other just like a dirty woman. Once the job is done, they don't need you anymore. There is no loyalty in the radical left. There is no loyalty in the Islamists. They, matter of fact, they practice, and I always have a hard time, the takia, or however you say the word, which is pretty much lied to the infidels for the cause of pushing Sharia law in all of the world, to prepare for the 12th Mahdi and to have this globalist jihadist takeover of the world. They believe in globalism too. It just happens to come back to their national religious ideology. And so you see that it's not just a wrong idea, it's a dangerous idea. It's a poisonous idea. And they want to silence us, but we're not going to be silent because it's dangerous and it's poisonous. And as a matter of fact, our pulpits need to wake up. Our churches need to wake up. I have people that's even within the conservative Christian movement that says we shouldn't be talking about these things. I'm talking about it because if we let it happen, if we don't stand in defense of these things, then you're not going to go to your tax exempt church and stand behind the pulpit and be freely able to worship your God and preach your doctrine behind the four walls, because they're not satisfied with just taking territory outside your four walls. They want to come for your church too. Ask your brothers and sisters in South Korea. Ask them in Canada if it's not a threat. And you can see it's getting so bad that even in Alberta, Canada, they're wanting to break away from the Canadian government. And so I don't care how many people are intimidated into silence because they have been deceived. We need American people, and especially Christians, and especially people that believe in freedom, to stand up and speak out and take it to the ballot box and win. This is a spiritual war, but it does get played out in the natural, in voting and taking over institutions. We are in an ideological spiritual war. It does begin with prayer. It does begin with preaching truth. But then we do need to be mobilized, not just to sit back and let them take territory. But America was founded because preachers and patriots came together for the cause of freedom. The pulpit influenced the patriots, and they fought for freedom to secure the right of the freedom of speech and the freedom of religion, the right to bear arms, because they knew with the unarmed populace, the government can exercise tyranny, and there's not anything we can do against it. And so that's why over in South Korea, it's gotten so bad that there was a pastor that was trying to rise up to get a movement together to speak out against it because it's starting to take over. And now he's arrested because of that. That's going to come to America. If you think that America is exempt from that, we are not. It can happen here just like it can happen there if we keep eroding our country away. And so that's why at this very time, under the COVID-19 madness, I felt this burden. I feel it even more so today, that there needs to be a rising up of voices. I want to represent our voice at the table because we have been underrepresented. We have been underrepresented and misrepresented because we have not allowed our voice to be represented at the table. And we're trying to push back against the lies of this age because I don't know about anybody else, but I love being able to wake up on Sunday morning and go to our church freely and worship our God freely. But America's going to lose that if the people does not secure the fact that we must have a government ran by the people for the people, and we must secure these freedoms. And the first way we do it is we got to speak so that people learn it and they be mobilized to preserve it, especially at the ballot box. The difference between us and the radical leftists, they use it by force. They can't accept losing. We don't accept losing either, but we don't resort to violence. We try to become smarter. We try to become more full of wisdom to figure out how we win. We are in an ideological spiritual war, and we must win if we're going to have the saving of our nation. And I understand that before Jesus comes again, if you believe that like I do, things are going to get worse. But that doesn't mean we just sit down, lay over, and let it happen. Do you realize when Antiochus came in and he began to take Jerusalem, it's because of the weak Jews selling out their brethren and helping it happen? That's why I have a problem with those that supposedly on the conservative right that believe in Christian principles that says we should be silent. You're helping the Antiochus like spirit come in and take our nation. And that may not gain popularity with many, but there's going to be many that believe this as well. And they're going to like this program. You know why? Because their voice is not being represented. So we're going to represent their voice. If everybody else wants to be a coward and doesn't want to represent their voice, we'll represent your voice. We'll cry loud and spare not for you. And if you like this, then I ask you to please support our movement. You can support us by if you want monetary donations, that's fine. I'm not very good about asking for money. Revealedpublications@gmail.com. You can ask us how you can support us by emailing us. You can purchase my book, The Final Flame. I'm not very good at marketing all of that because I don't even like the idea of having to use money to try to build it. But I understand it takes that. And if you want to help us so that we can keep voicing out, your help, your support means more to us than we can ever express. We are deeply grateful because of it. Now, that leads us into the opposing worldviews. See, there's some worldviews that says the world's getting better. There's some worldviews that says the world's getting worse. And this gets played out even in Christian theology. Are we having a great falling away? Or are we having an end time revival? There's even a idea of Christian dominion theology that we're going to Christianize many of the institutions before Jesus Christ comes again. I don't buy into that myself. However, is the world getting better? Is the world getting worse? I think both are happening. I think there's some that are saying it's just getting worse, worse, worse. Some are saying, no, it's actually getting better. I think both are happening, and both can use actually history. They can use examples, and they can use Bible to show this. Are we having great revival in the last days, or are we having a great falling away? I believe both, actually. And let me explain. I do believe our worlds became more diplomatic. We're not as barbaric as we used to be. We don't have Genghis Khan lighting people on fire and catapulting them and lighting cities on fire, okay? We don't have Rome selling tickets to the general public to watch Christians be eaten by lions. So I think in that regard, we're less barbaric in a lot of senses today. We have more peace than what happened through much of the history. A lot of world history is wars, very nasty, barbaric wars. So I think we are more diplomatic. I think we do have greater good today, and I believe that's because the principles of Judeo-Christian Christian principles have actually affected much of the world, and that's what's brought a greater good. At the same time, I do believe that deception is becoming greater. And I do believe the same old barbaric beast has wore the mask of a lamb, claiming to be right, claiming to be good, claiming to be the one to save us, and is actually deceiving the masses to buy into this ideology. And I do believe because of that, sin is deceptively on the rise, as we've seen all the things that we see today that is anti the Bible, anti God, anti Christianity, and it's becoming more and more deceptive. So I think both are happening simultaneously. And because of that, I do believe there's going to be a great falling away in the last days, and we are going to go through greater suffering. But at the same time, I also believe that there is going to be a revival, that there's going to be the counterculture movement of people that want to come to our side. So I think both are simultaneously happening. This is what keeps me balanced to say that I understand things are going to get worse, but we must keep continuing the fight because we also are going to have a reviving. And so I believe that this is the greatest time, that when darkness grows greater, then we should be the light that shines brighter. And this is what helps me stay grounded in what I believe in. I do believe that the enemy has not gone away forever, but for a season is rebranding, regathering, and is wanting to come back with a vengeance. And as they are out there in the world powers pushing this great reset 2.0, which is nothing more than a demonic force from hell being played out in politics and played out in economies and government. I believe all it's going to take is one radical leftist to get in. And if we have a blue sweep across our political powers, then all of a sudden they're going to join force. And what you thought was bad during COVID-19 will look like nothing, because that would just be the footmen before the horsemen come. And if we couldn't run with the footmen and fight against the footmen, how shall we when the horsemen come? And so that's why on this, we want to show you that it's not wrong to believe in proper nationalism. It's not wrong to believe that America, and now they want to say it's Christian nationalism. Christian nationalism, as if America was either not built on Christianity or it was evil because it was built on Christianity, because it is an oppressive system oppressing the oppressed. And I even so-called friends that have bought into these crazy lies that want to take history by sound bites, and they sound just like radical leftists while claiming to be more on our side. No, they're not. They're becoming reprobates to this, is what it's becoming. And so we believe that we need to restore Christian principles in our nation, and we understand we have certain unalienable rights that has been endowed to us, inalienable rights endowed to us by our Creator God, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that we have the right to speech and the right to religion, the right to the press, and that we have the right to bear arms, and so on down the line goes, right to a fair and speedy trial. And we don't even have that anymore. We have a two-tier justice system because the radical left has pushed that. George Soros has bought off judges, and so has money from the radical left. And so in America, yes, there's two dichotomies. I believe in the spiritual kingdom of God, but I also believe that we should be impacting our country, impacting our nation. I do not believe in being spiritual isolationists. I do believe that it comes first from being spiritual people of God, but we also must be impacting our natural world around us. And I think we should be impacting them on two fronts. Number one, the primary goal is we should be winning them into the kingdom of God. But secondarily, even if they don't want to come into the kingdom of God, I hope they become good patriotic Americans that love our country, so we can have the freedom to go to our church without being persecuted and put underground. And so there is a difference between proper nationalism, improper nationalism, and globalism. I reject improper nationalism. I reject globalism. And you find that because Vladimir Putin is wrong, that doesn't mean that everything in Ukraine is right. Now, I support Ukraine winning the war. Honestly, I support their national liberty and freedom, but I don't support this world economic United Nation push for globalism. And I'm glad President Trump is not buying into that. He's trying to broker a deal. And the reason why Trump does give a certain level of respect to Putin and these, and even to Xi of China, even though they're geopolitical threats and they're a different form of nationalism that we don't believe in, is because at the same time, Vladimir Putin is evil dictator. Yes, that's true. But he also says that the West is becoming evil because of our AI push and because that we are trying to, he believes we're enacting hate crimes upon our children because we are changing their biological sex and we're teaching them all types of radicalized ideas that really is not Christian principles, even though we're claiming to be a Christian nation here in the West. And so I have to say that while I disagree with the things that Vladimir Putin is doing, he's also right about that. And he's right that Ukraine and the West is wrong if we do these things. There can be two wrongs and two rights at the same simultaneous time. And that's the problem. Not everything is black and white. There's a lot of gray area. So we can reject the wrong, improper nationalism of Vladimir Putin, but that does not push me into the globalist ideology that even Ukraine wants to be a part of. And so we have to weigh ourselves through all of that. And we have to understand that there is a middle ground. It's called proper nationalism. It's called America First. It's called the ideas of the West. And I pray that this has been enlightening to you. America, I love you. God bless you.